Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits using technology. Before we get started, I just want to let my audience know that I am still recovering from a laryngitis episode last week. My voice is a bit scratchy. I apologize for that, and I might be doing some coughing, and hopefully that'll be edited out. So just with that in note, I wanted to welcome my guest today is Erik Tomalis from Virtuous. Erik, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex. How are you? Yeah, from Virtuous. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I know you're abroad. I'm stateside. We're all over, right?
All over. So for people who are hearing you for the very first time, can you explain a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, me personally, I'm Erik Tomalis. I come from the Western Pennsylvania. I'm a nonprofit leader. I've been in nonprofit the last 20 some years on the front line serving, healthcare, higher ed, couple other major nonprofits, but my background has primarily been in the face-to-face fundraising. I've made over 4,000 face-to-face solicitations in my career to support a lot of nonprofit organizations for a lot of worthwhile causes. But most recently, I just came on to join the team at Virtuous about a year and a half ago. I was around the 30th employee. And, like you, Alex, we were just talking about this earlier, is not many people knew who Virtuous is. And I never even heard of Virtuous either until a friend introduced me to our CEO, our founder, Gabe Cooper. Had a 10-minute conversation with him, and I was enamored by the idea and this concept of responsive fundraising. And I wanted to jump on board, and I wanted to come out there and be that evangelist for the nonprofit industry to help support and train and guide our nonprofits to better technology, better opportunities, more efficiencies, things that were going on in the platform. But Virtuous is a modern day CRM. It's much more than just that CRM, but it's concepts and its core principles that we'll talk about here shortly. It's just all about responsive fundraising.
Awesome. So before we get into some of the details, I'm curious to know, what is your background? Like, how is it that you came to work at, besides the conversation like you mentioned, what was it, where did you start from? And what was really the captivating moment where you said, oh, I have to work for this organization?
The captivating moment was that 10-minute conversation with Gabe. I was introduced through, like I said, I've been in this industry a long time. We're networked, got a lot of connections, a lot of great mentors that have guided me on my journey in nonprofit. And one of my close friends, Tim Kachuriak, introduced me to Gabe. And, like I said, it was a 10-minute conversation. And it was just, I never thought I'd be on the tech side serving nonprofit because, like I said, my background has always been dealing with the annual fund, building capital campaigns, focused on face-to-face and major giving and leading these nonprofit organizations. And I thought I would always be serving our community, but instead of supporting one organization, I now have the opportunity to serve thousands, and be able to evangelize and talk about, how we can do things a whole lot better for our nonprofits.
Awesome. So let's say at a high level, before we get into the details, how would you define Virtuous?
Well, Virtuous is much more than just a CRM, right? So, I'm used to using one CRM and then multiple different systems surrounding it. I'd have a database administrator, would have to download a report and upload it into our CRM. But one thing I was enamored about with our concept was everything is holistic. Everything is inside one platform to make our jobs on the front line a lot easier, right? Like 20 some years ago when I joined my first nonprofit, the first day on the job, my board president looked at me and was like, you need to raise $15 million. How are you going to do it this year? And he broke it down. And the answer then was, let's hire headcount. It's got to get some full-time employees. Let's build an annual fund. Let's get some major gift and mid-level gift officers and see what we can do to build those relationships. But this idea today is we have to do more with less. There are so many different things out there. It's hard with the great resignation and the great migration to find quality candidates that want to stay with our nonprofits. So we have to do these efficiencies in the background and the technologies that can help push that next level for our nonprofits. And honestly, like my old way of fundraising was reactive. It was a reactive fundraising. Someone would donate online and I would call them, I would well screen them, I would want to thank them, and then I want to go visit them. Whereas responsive is more like a Netflix, right? Like we just finished Stranger Things on, your Netflix series, and automatically Netflix suggests another television show based on your preferences. And my wife and I have different experiences of Netflix in the same household, in the same account, but we have our own personalized journey. And that's responsive fundraising at its core, is just taking these donors down a journey, being responsive, being thoughtful, being personal, being efficient with our staffing model, and being able to grow generosity at a high level within our nonprofit.
Cool. So I'm really excited to get into some of these features to see what it does and doesn't do. But I'm curious to know before we get into that is who would be the ideal client? Which nonprofit, which industry, what size, budget? Because there are a few options available out there, and we'll get to some of the competitors. But I'm curious to know where is your special niche where Virtuous is the right choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that question a lot. And key thing for us is we're nonprofit agnostic. We support all verticals, all causes, all missions. We love the nonprofit industry. Our core principle is to grow global generosity. And, honestly, we have a goal set internally to raise net new revenue of $1 billion of growth and generosity to all nonprofits. We're at about $400,000 in net new revenue to these organizations, which is incredible. So we're nonprofit agnostic. Technology wise, I will say one place we don't do well at is, some of the arts, and specifically in the ones that have seating assignments. We don't have that technology, so we can't be able to provide it. However, we work with a lot of art-based organizations and the arts where they have focus on individual giving or planned giving or major giving, or, the individual contributor is at a higher level than just the ticket and the seat assignment. Primarily though, our focus is all human services, all verticals, all nonprofits to help grow that generosity. We can scale with organizations, whether they have 500 records or, 5 million records. We can go all different levels to be able to help support.
All right, so let's jump into the features then. I grabbed this from the website. I see about 8 major ones. We'll just go through each one. If you can give me like a summary for each one so we can get a feel for what it does. So the first one is the nonprofit CRM. I imagine this is basic account, contact, opportunity type of situation.
Correct. So that's where it's kind of like your home base, right? Like you have the ability to do the donor management, be able to look at the data, look at all those different components of contact records. The unique thing with our contact record is, I think about my wife and myself in a typical CRM in my older nonprofit that I would use, we'd each have our own individual record and they're not linked to each other. However, within Virtuous, we actually have a parent-child comparison where we have the household of the Tomalis family, like Erik and Kate Tomalis, and then both Erik and Kate underneath have their own separate contact card that rolls up to one where, as running a nonprofit, the U.S. government asks us to be able to provide the tax receipting to a household, but individually, I want to watch Stranger Things, or my wife wants to watch this Harry and Meghan documentary. So like they have different personalities and connection points based on the relationship and the personalization of that nonprofit. That was my Netflix reference there, Alex.
Awesome. So I guess you also have roll-ups too. So if you donate X dollars and your wife donates Y dollars, the household has the combination. And then you could define the relationships that you have, because if you have siblings living with you or children living with you, I guess can you also define the relationships between each of the individuals?
Yep, 100%. And what's even neater about that is the concept of, I think through, like I support a local charity here in Pittsburgh, and I do that individually. If my wife decides out of the, gratitude and is at the year end, she goes online and makes a donation to that same organization, she's not getting a new donor journey welcome series because our household is already been contributing. She's getting that sustainer, that retaining, that opportunity, that stewardship experience, rather than just, hey, my wife's a brand new donor, even though her husband has been donating for years. And that's what's neat about having them all linked to one another.
So that personalized journey, I imagine there might be some scenarios where you want separate journeys because it's really a separate path. And then sometimes you want it where they're combined, like you said. Do you have that possibility of deciding which one is which?
Yep, absolutely. And the journeys itself, those are really built by the nonprofit, and they're guided by our team of saying, what is the art of possibilities? So a lot of these nonprofits that we're working with are building their own specific journey. Whatever way they want to go, they have the ability to do that. But we internally use this concept called crawl, walk, run. So we're going to teach them, how these nonprofits on how to, crawl. And then they're going to start walking on their own, and then they're going to run and just do it themselves. And so that's where the idea of these donor journeys and automation happen.
For that crawl, walk, run, is it more of an approach for how you start using the system? Is it a type of automation, meaning, in phase one, you want to keep automation to a minimum and then accelerate it? Like, how does that expression play out?
we don't want to overwhelm, right? I mean, that's the one thing with us as nonprofit leaders. We have a lot of things that are happening around us. We have a lot of fires to put out. We have to do a lot of work. So we want to get folks in the mindset of just crawling together. We're going to support our nonprofit leaders and our points of contacts within the organization on how to do and how to use Virtuous so that they feel comfortable doing it on their own. We're going to be a lot, because like I said, 90% of our staff come from the nonprofit industry. So we want to be supportive of these leaders. So we're going to be alongside the journey with them, but we're going to be guiding them on that pathway.
Cool. And then last comment then about the CRM core is, do you have something or a concept called affiliations where you can have relationships between people and then organizations?
Yep. So we call that relationships. And so I got to go back a step, right? Like we have our own glossary of terms because all our CRMs are completely different, but they have different ideas but similar concepts. Internally at Virtuous, we call those relationships. And, I will share, because I sat in the chair running a nonprofit, it is the hardest thing in the world to manage all of those relationships, right? Like you think through a husband and a wife, maybe the husband manages his own donor advised fund and the wife is a CEO of a company. Both of those support the nonprofit. They have a child in the program. How do you manage all of those contact records, whether it's a donor advised fund, a company that has employees that sponsor the golf outing, the donor advised fund that supports the mission, right? Like all of those are connected through this concept of, you called it affiliations, I call it relationships, and all of them have their own separate contact record, but they're all linked together, whether it's an in-kind or a soft credit or a hard credit to be able to go to the organization. No one outside from nonprofit understands how difficult that is. Everyone in for-profit, it's like, right? It's just, but we have the mindset of doing that internally.
There's always extra fun challenges with nonprofits. And forgive me if I'm using words that I'm familiar with because of the Salesforce term, but I mean, obviously there are the functionality is fundamental and shared. It's just the semantics that might change a bit.
Yep, 100% I agree with you.
And then on the organization side, so non-households, I imagine you have also that kind of parent-child relationship where you can have an organization that has subsidiaries and locations and stuff like that. Like a nonprofit's working with another large nonprofit and they have their headquarters and they've got then different satellite offices around the country. You can have a relationship with those organizations, have relationships with each other, and they've got certain types or subtypes to categorize them.
Yeah, we have the ability, we do a lot of tagging in that mindset. And so that's what we would do. So if we have an affiliated organization or a national or a local organization and they say, hey, I want these people to be referenced to the New England area, they all have their own tag and that can be broken down there in that mindset. The other thing that we do with a lot of the larger organizations that have, let's say, they have Church and Ministry Alliance or they have an international connection, but it's all under one larger database. We have the ability to do multiple databases inside that organization where they're linked in the background to be able to, go back and forth with each different subset group, if you will.
Cool. So the next feature is automation. So if you could speak a bit about that, how much control does the nonprofit have to design their own automation? Are there any kind of templates that they can use? What are the most commonly used automation scripts, stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So automation is kind of like our secret sauce, if you will, right? Like think about all the things that we do as nonprofit leaders all the time, like the stuffing and sealing envelopes, the new donor journey welcome series, all of those letters that we want to acknowledge and thank our donors. Everything that we do on a regular basis can be done through automation. And so automation to us could be, like I said, I talk about a new donor journey welcome. Someone donates online. Can you imagine the idea of immediately that individual gets wealth screened? And I'm going to use the example because I'm a Pittsburgher. Like, let's say Mark Cuban donates to my nonprofit organization $100, right? He donates just $100. Instead of him going directly to the annual fund person just to be thanked, he gets automatically tasked to the CEO, the executive director, because if Mark Cuban's donating $100, he's a potential board member or a potential major gift opportunity, right? So utilizing wealth screening to be able to scratch the surface on identifying what their opportunity is and then putting them in the right bucket within the institution, how they are thanked. Are they thanked at the highest level or are they thanked at the lowest level? And just taking them down that journey. That's just one of the best practices that we recommend all nonprofits moving forward. But you're right, we do have our own best practice template library that is available to every single nonprofit. Nonprofits as I sat in the chair, I did believe this, is we do things differently than any other nonprofit out there. But the reality of it is we're all looking for the same automations, the same best practice. We're still looking for the same templates. And so we have this best practice library that has a new donor journey welcome series, has a volunteer response, has an event follow-up component, right? I mean, a lifetime donor value. When an individual hits a threshold of $1,000 a year, what happens? Or a cumulative lifetime of 10,000, what happens? We're pulling those reports on when we have time as nonprofit leaders, but letting automation go and work in the background pushes that individual to the top level and be personal and responsive. And so even to the idea of just, like I said, I talked about it briefly, was like the event follow-up. Could you imagine the idea of if I go to a homecoming event and then the day after I get a text message with a survey question of how I want to get involved or donate or learn more. And then 2 days later, a gift officer calls that individual to say thank you, right? Like those are done through automation and tasks and follow up and being able to do there. And all that is done multi-channel: letters, text messaging, postcards, email, tasks. I mean, all those different things that we all need to be doing to stay forward thinking.
You got my attention there with the wealth screening. That almost sounds like a bit AI-ish, because I imagine there's more than one person in the world that has the name Mark Cuban. So is it based on some kind of fuzzy logic, maybe an email address and some combination of information that would then either pre-tag or flag this person as a potential major gift donor or low gift donor? Or how does that work exactly? Not exactly, but high level, I meant.
So one thing with Virtuous is like, we are one of those technology companies that we actually have an open API. We have direct integrations with some of the greatest partners serving the nonprofit space. Donor Search AI and iWave has that direct integration to be able to do that wealth screening and looking at the artificial intelligence to be able to push that. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the funding. It's not about the dollars. It's about that behavioral data that's surrounding the individual of how to get them to move to that next step, whether it's social insights. And that's our next one of those other buckets that we're going to talk about here shortly, is the signals, right? Like signals to us is the social scraping, the behavioral data, the wealth screening, of the AI component to be able to move into that next journey. All of this works collaboratively together there, Alex. That's what's really neat about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about signals next. Well, what is signals?
Well, the key thing with signals is there's a predictive scoring that we put on every single record, whether it's, it's all based on modeling, whether it's the wealth rating or the social rating. The wealth rating is based on RFM to an individual organization, how often a person gives, how frequent, how much. And including in there is our wealth scraping data. And that's utilizing our partners, Donor Search, iWave, and a bunch of others that we're working with. We also do this social scraping, which scrapes the public social media accounts of our prospects and our donors within our CRM. So it's looking for individuals that are active in social media, that have that, I gotta put the asterisk, that they're public social media accounts. If they're private, we can't pull it. But if it's public, what's really neat is the AI and the signals in the background is looking at our CRM, looking at the social media and seeing how many people are socially connected in both of them. So these are those influencers that are living within your institution that may be connected on, the social media accounts in other different areas. And we're pushing that to the top, because if they have a high social insight score and a low financial or a wealth score, maybe I want to invite those people to join our events and come to our walk or come to our gala and bring their friends, because they know people that want to support our organization. And then what's really neat is we can start doing these, predictors and these personalized emails based off of all those different components. And we have the integrations and data insights, and we have a lot of other AI partners and tools that are out there that have that ability to link into Virtuous to be able to drive that generosity.
So you have the ability to scrape the most popular social media websites to be able to get this information. So even TikTok?
Yep.
Wow.
Let me look at TikTok. But so we have that integration with one of our partners. It's basically like a white label, and it just goes directly to this institution. And they do the social media scraping of all of that. It's primarily like a LinkedIn, a Twitter, all those different places. I don't know about the TikTok. I don't even know. I'm too old for TikTok, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. But it's curious because it sounds like a tool has this ability to process a lot of data and then flag or tag the people that are tension worthy, which saves, I imagine, quite a bit of time.
Well, and even like I think through this, like I managed gift officers at my hospital system, and one of the things that drove me insane was I'd have a gift officer come in my office and say, "Hey, Eric, who do I need to call today?" And I looked at that individual and I was like, we're a health system in Western Pennsylvania. Everybody is a prospect. Make a phone call, right? And that's where my brain went. But like, there's thousands upon thousands of people. How do they prioritize their day? It's just drinking water from a fire hose consistently. But on our main dashboard within Virtuous, it is the best call. There's a place called Best Calls to Make Today. And it's solely based on those two things, social score and financial score. And it has it broken down, and you can actually call from your phone because we do have an app and it's a hyperlink. You can email from there or you can call from there, and it automatically notes it on the record to make the gift officer's life a whole lot easier. But then the other side of the coin it flips over because, like I said, I keep going back to this idea of generosity. There's the best calls to say thank you. So let's talk about those people who gave yesterday or who gave recently that's in my portfolio or that's just assigned to me or whatever it might be. So those leading indicators are the reasons why it makes our gift officers and our fundraisers' job a whole lot more efficient and more successful for what they're doing.
So the next topic is marketing and email. And we've touched upon it a bit already, but I imagine, are you able to do marketing campaigns directly from within the tool? So let's say, for example, you want to do, outreach at certain marketing campaigns, email campaigns saying, we have this donation or not donation, rather, we have an event coming up. What are the limitations of the marketing side then?
So one thing that always bothered me was I would always, when sitting in the chair for the nonprofit, I would always have our own email marketing system. And it would be the basic stuff, right? Like first name, last name, contact information. And it had all these different lists. It was all segmented appropriately, but it never talked to our CRM, right? And it didn't. So what's really neat about our marketing piece is the ability to be able to pull any of those fields from the CRM into our email. So think through like last gift date, program that they wanted to fund. What did they graduate? What's their degree, right? Like where are they? What are they being most active? And that's where we can be personalized on those journeys. Like I talked about earlier, it's like, what show are you watching on Netflix? Harry and Meghan, right? So my wife would have that field inside her email. And what's really neat is you can do all of the different newsletters or contact or new donor journey welcomes or thank yous. All those different email marketing campaigns can be run through the marketing side. And the coolest part about it is it automatically logs to the contact record. So there's no database administrator having to download and upload when they have the ability and making sure that everything is accurate. And from a fundraiser standpoint, you can click on the hyperlink and see what email was sent or what letter was just sent. All of that component is there, and having that direct think through like receipting, acknowledgement, thank you letters, all that stuff can be automatically done through the marketing. It's a very simple system. It's a WYSIWYG, like what you see is what you get, like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact that has all the different components from a basic newsletter writer who can build out the buttons and the tags and the segments and everything else. But if you have an advanced person, we have the ability to pull the HTML coding and be able to do A/B testing based on click rate or open rate, all the different components of all the higher end marketing firms, but it just links directly to that record. Other neat thing is, like I said, text messaging is also in that area. So we have the ability to do SMS messaging out of the system. A lot of organizations take advantage of that, like YMCAs or Boys and Girls Clubs. They all love that feature. Or think through, you have a golf event and you want to let everybody know that there's an auction coming up. Click on this link to go to the auction, right? Like you have the ability to use it there and have to be able to tag all those event attendees within the system as well. But again, there's another best practice template library included in there for all nonprofits to be able to support, as well as do campaign management and be able to monitor what different levels and where they want to go from there.
I'm curious about the next feature about online giving and payment processing, because sadly, it's one of the weaker elements in Salesforce, at least for nonprofits in Canada. So I'm curious to know, I mean, imagine that in your tool, it's very integrated. Web forms are possible, multi-currency. So if you can talk a bit about those two features.
So you are right. We built out our online giving forms specifically because we saw the opportunity to help support nonprofits. I talked about that new donor journey, right? Like someone donates online, Mark Cuban, right? Honestly, Mark Cuban, if he is a monthly donor to our organization, we have this code that we put on our website that connects to the CRM. So we actually know Mark Cuban is clicking around our website. And when he goes to make his contribution on our online giving form, instead of seeing that static donor page of 25, 50, or 100, because we know Mark is that monthly donor of 50, his page starts at that $100 level. It's a dynamic giving page. So we're listening to our donors. And so we have the ability to see an increased return on investment for our nonprofits because they're dynamic giving pages. We also built out our own payment processor for both, international clients and customers, they utilize Stripe and we have the ability to do that. But those individuals that want that lower processing fee, we built our own payment processor fee. So you have the ability to use Virtuous payments and have that directly integrated inside the Virtuous. So when someone donates online, it automatically links to their record and it be able to connect there in the background. So we accept all of them: Apple Pay, Google Pay, all the mobile wallets, if you ACH, the check. We also recommend, I've been doing a lot of traveling and going to conferences, and I forget the organization. I feel bad. I should give them credit for it. But I was the idea of having the donor pay for the cost of the fees. I heard from a friend at this conference was 90% of people, if the box is already checked, they will leave it checked. Only 10% of people actually uncheck that box. So I recommend to nonprofits all the time, check the box. I was against it too, because I thought it was just overwhelming, but 90% of the people leave it checked and be able to cover the fees to be able to go through. But yeah, our giving forms are, embedded directly onto the organization's website. So you're not going to see Virtuous anywhere. You're not going to see any of our product. You're not going to see any of our logo. It is literally taking the shape and the feel of the nonprofit. I got that phone call too. It was like, who's this PayPal from a board member? Why am I giving to PayPal? And they don't know, they don't understand enough, but they trust the organization to contribute. And so that's why we want to do those embeddable forms directly for that nonprofit.
That 90% actually applies for pretty much everything in life. I forget which Scandinavian country, I think it's Sweden, but I can't recall offhand, where when you get your driver's license, by default, you are also a donor. So organ donor, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. So by default, you're already set and you have to uncheck something in order to say you opt out of that. Versus, let's say in Canada, you have to opt in. And it's like, it's again, 90% choose the default value and only that 10%. So that's a nice little trick across multiple domains.
And it was the opposite too, was this individual shared this story about how if it was unchecked, only 40% checked the box, right? Like, so I just think through that. I was like, I'm going to go with the law of averages and numbers and always leave it checked. All of our stuff is PCI compliant, HIPAA, all the securities. We have a lot of healthcare institutions and a lot of larger universities. So we're over secure. We are over secure when we need to be.
You mentioned multi-currency and then all those different types of payment processors. What about multi-language?
Yeah, we do have the ability to do that both. And so, I think through like the Arabic language is, the keyboard is backwards, right? So we have the ability to do that, to be able to build out. We have a lot of customers that are taking advantage of that. The multiple currency, our technologists and our product developers are the best of the best. And I'm super proud of them. I am not a technologist. I'm more of a fundraiser than anything, but I love our product. One of the things I do love on our contact record, I think it's unbelievable that they were able to build it and how they were able to do it, was this multi-currency. So I know you're in London right now. If someone donated in pounds to a United States organization, on their contact record would be the British pounds amount, the American currency amount, time stamped at that exchange rate at that exact moment. And I just think that is the neatest thing. So as like a fundraiser, I could call the donor and say, hey, thank you for your contribution of X in their currency, even though it comes over in US dollars. It's fascinating to be able to do that. Great technologists on our team.
There's a couple of features I didn't notice, and I'm sure you have, but I wanted, if you could speak to them, a mobile app. So either for the team using, like the nonprofit using the mobile app, and or let's say a volunteer signs up in some various ways, is there any way that they could have access either to a mobile app or access the nonprofit event on their mobile device.
So you're gonna ask me. You just asked me a question that I need to put a consultant hat on. I don't know if I'd want my volunteer or a board member in my CRM, but it just depends on their permissions. But absolutely, we do have a mobile app. You can do it on your iPad, your computer, your phone, whatever it might be. A lot of individuals, I think, through gift officers, take advantage of it when they're on the road, when they're traveling, to be able to, log their notes or make those phone calls. A lot of special event individuals take advantage of it when they're doing a day of check-in for a golf event or a gala. They have the ability to take their iPad or their computer or their phone instead. But yeah, we do have an app. The other thing we also have a volunteer platform, and that also too has its own app as well. So if you want to find out what volunteer opportunities are surrounding you right now in your area, you can go and log in and register and be able to sign up and do your security clearances if it's necessary, or any of that information is all logged in there, and be able to control your own volunteer management activity.
And then what about reports and or dashboards?
We do all the reporting. We do, like I said, we have all the best practices that are already built in there. The neat thing is, because like I said earlier about how our marketing and our email is integrated into all of the components, I think through, if I wanted just a daily gift report sent to my email at 9:00 every day, I could have that. Or if I wanted to live in the system, I could see it at dashboard. But the ability to have those scheduled reports sent out daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, at whatever time, I think that's a value, because you have the ability to have individuals inside your organization that don't necessarily live in the database, like your CEO or your executive director, but they want to see, the live bunts, the history, and be able to pull out what opportunities are out there, what board activity is going on, how are they doing the give get, all those different components. We have all those reports baked in as best practices, but the scheduled reporting is a really neat area that I like to share with folks.
Awesome. So that's basically some of the core features. We don't have time to go through every one in detail because we'd be here for the entire. But as we know that CRMs are not a silo, it shouldn't be a silo, that you want to have it integrated with other platforms, systems, whatnot. So what kind of integrations are possible?
So we have a whole host. Like I said, I started off with, we have an open API. So if individuals, want to use like a Tray.io or a Zapier to be able to bring in their own integration that their system has that open API, we play well in the sandbox with other technologists. Not to mention, if you go to our website, virtuous.org, we actually update our integrations and our partners on the regular. So an area that we don't do at that highest level is, like peer-to-peer. We don't have a thermometer. We can't go out and do these giant campaigns, but there are some really great partners in our industry that have those direct integrations inside of Virtuous that you can be able to go down that path and be able to use them. Like, I think through like a Fundraise Up, a Fundraise, a Classy, all those different places have that direct integration. But we do have the open API and tons of other integrations that are out there that are leaning forward.
So once a client purchases Virtuous, do you offer some kind of professional services, some kind of training, or do you normally work with partners? How does the setup and configuration and trying to figure this whole thing out work?
Yeah, so that's the migration, that's the implementation, right? That we're talking through, and the training and the support. We do our migration and implementations primarily in-house. So we have our team, like I said, we have 90% of our team come from the nonprofit industry, and we're growing a lot. So we want to help support our nonprofits. That process, you're going to laugh at this, Alex. I use the analogy of, it's a lot like Shawshank Redemption. I don't know if you've seen it. Remember when he goes through the tunnel at the end, and it's a long, long journey? Like, no one likes migrations. They're not fun. They're dirty. They're sticky. They're messy and everything else. But we're going to be in that tunnel with the nonprofit from start to finish, because we know you're going to get cleaned off at the end, and you're going to have a light at the end of the tunnel. But we actually we do it different. We start off with training and support to kick off our migration. We want our nonprofit leaders to understand responsive, to be bought into that mindset, to understand those glossary of terms. It's done through 3 ways, where we have live trainers on our team that will sit down with the nonprofit. We'll train them on everything that needs to be with Virtuous. It'll be recorded and it'll shared with the nonprofit. So as you grow your team, you're going to be able to use those recordings for future staff. You're also going to have that individual learning where you're going to go into the Virtuous Academy. And there's 5 different certificates that are inside the academy. They're all CFRE accredited. Being a responsive listener, a responsive fundraiser, the administrator, the finance, the fundraiser, all those different components are all in there. You're going to learn by yourself in the academy to pull those certificates. And then the other side, you're going to have your own sandbox. You're going to go in there and you're going to get hands dirty. You're going to break things. And you're just going to play around with it as an individualist. And I think what's really neat about that is all 3 of those we learn differently, right? In a classroom, individually, breaking things hands-on. And that's how you're able to lean into that migration, because as we do the migration, our onboarding team will actually sit with the leadership and say, hey, let's map what is appropriate. What are the fields that you want to be? What are you used to in your previous system? And what are the best practices within Virtuous to be able to help grow? And so we're going to do 3 quality assurance data pools, right? The first one is the dirtiest. It's going to be bad. It's not going to be correct, right? I'm just going to say it right where it is. The second and the third are going to be the most accurate. We take our time. It's all about data efficacy and making you feel comfortable inside the platform. And then as we go post live migration, you're still going to get live trainer. You're going to have that one-to-one trainer that's going to sit with you, make you feel comfortable, pull that Tesla out of the garage rather than just keep it there with all the bells and whistles. We want you to use this system. And then when you're live in Virtuous, you're going to get an account manager that'll sit down with you every 2 or 3 months to be able to make sure that you understand the bells and whistles and that you're understanding what needs to be done. We're going to have that live support, whether it's chat or through ticket or phone support, whatever it might be, to be on those little minor issues that you're going to have. But that account manager, one thing that's really neat about our technology is we actually update our product roadmap every 6 weeks. So honestly, Alex, like events was a brand new component. We built that a couple months ago. The volunteer piece came months prior to that. And so these aren't just every 6 weeks bug fixes. These are giant updates for our system that we want our nonprofits to learn. And we listen to our nonprofits. 40% of these ideas come from our current customers, and the other 50 or 60% come from our staff who are innovative, thinking ahead, trying to see what is in the future of our industry. But that training and that support, we're going to be lockstep with each one of the leaders in that organization.
So it sounds like you're much more than just a product company. You're also a service company. Do you have any partners that you work with? People like myself, for example, who are in the Salesforce realm, where people who would buy Salesforce, they buy just the product and they work with a partner to help them set it up. Do you have that kind of arrangement as well? Can people become a certified Virtuous implementer? And what would be the distinguishing markers then that a nonprofit would choose a partner over your services?
Yeah, we have a good amount of partners right now in that space supporting Virtuous. They are all doing the migrations, the implementations of the post-live support, but they're following that methodology that I just walked through, right? Like starting off with support, doing the QA, utilizing our academy, doing that post-live. And I can name at least 6 or 7 right now that have an active migration or implementation going on right now within Virtuous and a current customer. The other neat thing is those partners I value, because as these nonprofits just want to build out a brand new integration. We were just working with an organization the other day that they wanted integration with a new finance tool that we didn't have a current integration with. So this agency and this partner is building that for them. And it's just really neat because we're all coming at it from the right angle to help support nonprofits and go from there.
So you outsource to partners more than partners that would promote is it more an affiliation, or is it more like the customer would come to you, you say, well, this particular need isn't within our wheelhouse. Here's our partner you should work with.
No. So when we bring on a customer, we'll go through that conversation about bringing on migration. And then in that situation, we'll determine, okay, which one of our partners can help support us. If it's larger, if it has an issue or multiple data sources, whatever it might be, we know our partners very well. And we actually have a full partner team internally that actually manage all of that. But yeah, we have the ability to do both. Primarily though, it's done in-house.
So how does pricing work? I went to the website. I couldn't find any prices. I saw different categories, but I didn't see any pricing. How does that scale?
That's what's really neat is our pricing is solely based on number of active records. So all these different things that we're talking about, the CRM, the automation, the giving, the signals, the events, the marketing, all those different things are primarily focused on number of records. So if an individual has 500 records, or like I said, 5 million, their price points are going to be completely different. We have 3 different key platform solutions, right? Like our standard, our platform, and our enterprise. But our enterprise is 30,000 records and above. And that's a majority of organizations, right? They're not just 5 million records. They're decent sized nonprofit, but primarily it's based on number of records. The other unique for us, and I value this, a friend of mine at another partner organization shared this, was as advice to nonprofit leaders is never sign an agreement with a technology firm for more than 1 year. And main reason why he said that was because technology keeps advancing and keeps growing and keeps changing. And so we only do 12-month contracts. And I thought that was really coincidental to be able for him to share that. But we are continuing to grow generosity and through our technology. And we want to earn our nonprofits business. That's why we take so much time and effort in the training and the support to be able to grow. And so as an individual organization, let's say they add 500 records or 500 new donors in the middle of the year, we're not going to prorate them. We're not going to say, hey, you owe us X amount of dollars in the middle of the contract. We're going to add that 500 to the next year's contract as we renew and grow, because that nonprofit leader is doing their job. They grew generosity. They brought in 500 new donors, and our system did their job helping that nonprofit grow. So we want to continue down that path and help support nonprofits.
There are quite a few nonprofit CRMs available on the market today. There's more than I could probably list. I'm curious to know, where does your fit in that landscape?
Looking at our history of this past year of customers that closed lost, the real competitor to this whole thing, and I'd be curious at what a Salesforce, a Blackbaud, what their competitor landscape looks like. Ours is stagnation and change. I think about 50% of the closed losts from this past year are just nonprofit organizations feeling comfortable with the systems they currently have and not wanting to go outside and change and move to that next step. I mean, it's just that uncertainty, if you will. It's like a warm blanket, as I always talk about. And frankly, for 20 years, I stayed in one system too. So I get it. I mean, I used the same system over and over again, and I didn't want to jump out. And I think there's opportunity for growth out there. And honestly, we're more at the top of the pyramid. We are the fastest growing CRM inside the nonprofit space right now. And honestly, we're the best kept secret. Not many people know about us. We were talking about this earlier, Alex, where the name keeps popping up and you're hearing about it lately, but we've been around for a long time and we're getting that momentum right now. And it's been incredible. It's been a fun time to help support these nonprofits.
One of the biggest challenges for nonprofits, especially by being generally non-technical, is that change management portion where people are used to doing things a certain way. They've been doing it their whole life or whatnot. And to go to a new system, even if it is better, just that resistance to the change is a very, very strong marker that you have to pass.
Let me ask you this. I know you come from a Salesforce background, but how when you're as a developer, you changed the button from red to blue. How many people went crazy inside the organization, or you moved it like an inch to the left?
Oh, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah, there's always a balance. There's the tech side and the human side, and they both have to be looked at, reviewed, examined, discovered together. It can't be just one without the other.
Yeah. And I think, I failed to bring it up during our migration and implementation side, but there is a whole course on change management that we lead from top down, because the point of contact or the development department or the IT department all bought into Virtuous, but it's all about who moved my cheese, right? Like that little button and everything else. We have to train everybody else because, like I joked about, we want individuals using the system. I mean, I used a system for 20 some years and all it was a Rolodex. I just wanted to go and find contact information and never used it for what it could be. And with Virtuous, it's all about the efficiency. It's all about the holisticness and growing generosity within that institution.
Do you offer any trials, like free trials, to be able to play with the system before you actually make the purchase?
During the buying process or the sales process, we have the ability to open up. We've done it multiple ways. We have a sandbox where we allow prospects to actually go in and play around. We also, because of this idea of change is hard. I mean, we all expect it to look like the one way and what we're used to. We talked about like affiliations versus relationships. And we do this thing with our technology team of just doing a point and click. Saying, hey, how do I pull a report? This is what I want to do. And our solutions engineers will pull a report based on how they would want to see it. One thing that's really neat is we do a lot of thought leadership sessions just to do best practices for the entire industry. And we actually have it's called the Responsive Weekly. And every Thursday afternoon, we'll do a best practice. We'll bring in a thought leader for 30 minutes, non-salesy. There's no sales whatsoever. It's actually someone just doing good for the industry. And then the back 30 minutes is actually a demo. So I recommend folks always going in there, playing around, just asking the questions. It's very intimate, a small room of nonprofit leaders just to see what the system looks like and how to play around with it.
What's in the future for Virtuous? You mentioned updates every 6 weeks, but what is the long-term strategy, the plan, besides conquering the world, of course, which I'm sure you would love to be able to do? What can people expect to see from your organization?
We're methodical growth, honestly, with you. Is like I was just traveling with our CEO, Gabe Cooper, a couple of weeks ago. And, he's the guy that has that foresight, has that vision of where we want to go, but he's also got this foot on the brake. And we want to grow systematically. We want to grow with the industry, with our nonprofits, continue to support the ones and the customers that we have today. The roadmap itself, there's a whole bunch of great technology features that we're building, we're leaning into, but honestly, we're focused in on that constant support and internal growth. We are also, honestly, we're more in the acquisition phase. We've acquired 2 companies in the last 18 months, and we're just looking for partners that seamlessly connect with our core values, as well as, our system itself, and who want to help grow generosity, have that mindset, have that personality. And it's a great roadmap ahead. More to come. I can't wait for 2023, to be honest with you.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing more from you. This has been really insightful. Where can people get in touch with you and learn more about the product?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can search for Erik Tomalis on LinkedIn. I'm sure, Alex, you're going to tag me in your thing there. But we also have our website, virtuous.org. You go there, you play around with it. You can request a demo. You can look for thought leadership. You can hear all the different components that I've talked about with the platform itself. We also have the academy I talked about. What's really neat is academy.virtuous.org. You don't have to be a customer to learn about responsive fundraising or the administrator or how to be a financer, get your certificate, or if you need CFRE credits, go there. We actually want to be able to we open source all that information so that we can provide thoughtful leadership and best practices to the industry.
Erik, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Alex. Appreciate the time.
All right. Well, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me in the next Agents of Nonprofit.